Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Love Bay family, we're rising out of the ashes together. On tonight, our topic is the human experience. We're going to get an update from Jen Peterkin. So we have with us our co-host on tonight, my brother in the ministry, Minister Arthur Marks. And our guest, of course, is Jennifer Peterkin, host of The Human Experience. Listeners, if you have any questions or comments for our guest or our co-host, you can email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. If you have any resources that you would like to share with us on a national or local level from your country, your community, local organizations, or your faith community, you can also email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. And for real-time questions or comments, even after the program, you can text 437-778-3299. And with that, Jen, I would ask if you would greet our listeners again.
Yes, hello, Love Bay. I am so thrilled to be here. I am a sometimes co-host on Suffering in Silence, and so I am very honored to be invited to be a guest on the show. This is my second time that Tia has offered to let me come on and talk about my podcast, The Human Experience. And again, I'm so thrilled. So thank you so much, Tia.
Thank you. So, listeners, we have a bit of a little technical difficulty with Minister Mark. So, when he signs back in, he will introduce himself and then we'll go from there. In the meantime, I'd like to share some resources. In Pakistan, we have War Against Rape. Their website is war.org.pk. And then we have Badari, BEDARI. Their website is badari.org.pk. We have United Nations Development Program. Their website is www.undp.org. And then we have the Acid Survivors Foundation. Their website is acidsurvivors.org. And so with that, Minister Marks, if you could greet our listeners on this evening.
Good evening, everyone. This is Minister Arthur Marks, and I am honored to share in this experience with you all. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity just to serve and to help. Again, thank you. And again, my name is Arthur Marks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So with that, listeners, again, our topic on tonight is the human experience. We're going to get an update from Jen. So Jen, if you could just start by telling us again, what is the human experience and how did you come to create it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was on here last time to talk about the human experience, we hadn't yet launched. So the biggest update is that we actually have a show that you can go listen to now. So the human experience is on all podcasting platforms. So you can choose where you want to listen to it. We also have YouTube as well, but it's we're a little delayed on uploading there. But the Human Experience is a show about our stories and how the things that we go through in life really shape who we are and how we see the world, how we see other people, and how we see ourselves. So ultimately, I like to say that it's an exercise in compassion because I've found that through my own experience, but through talking with other people as well, that it's very difficult for people to hold on to positions of hatred when you are in proximity with people, when you actually sit down one-on-one and learn their story and learn who they are and why they are the way that they are. So even if you can't come to an agreement, even if you don't, you know, differ on fundamental issues, I've found that taking the time to listen to each other is the biggest step we can take towards fighting ignorance and hatred.
Yes. So tell us, what have you been up to? Tell us about your trips. The
Oh
human
gosh.
experience has taken you around the world. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a pleasure for me personally. I love to travel. It is the number one thing that I love to spend my time and money on. So if I have the opportunity, I'm going. Um, and one of the things that was really important to me when I started this project was that each interview that I did, I wanted it to be done in person. So obviously, as a listener of the interview of the podcast, you're not in the room with us. But me and whoever I'm interviewing, I am in the same room as that person. I am in their home, or I'm in their local library or local coffee shop, speaking with them. And to me, it was a huge part of bringing this to fruition, because seeing people in their own space and being physically proximate to people is such a huge piece of learning somebody's story. And it's also a huge honor to be welcomed into somebody else's space that they feel safe. So I have been able to do some interviews in Kenya. I've been able to do some in Romania. I have had some whispers about as something as far as Tasmania. So I am thrilled to for all of the opportunities that are opening up. And I will just say that anybody anywhere is welcome to reach out, because there is no place too far that I would travel to come sit with you and interview you about your story.
Awesome. So when you do take your trips, be it international or in the states, do you kind of make some personal time in here, do some sightseeing and speak with the locals,
Absolutely.
or
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is truly a pleasure. And being able to be in some places that are maybe a little bit off the beaten path, right? Because, when I am in Romania, I'm not in the capital city of Bucharest. It's still a pretty big city, but it's a mountain town. And,
Mhm.
when I was doing some interviews in Kenya, I was in rural Western Kenya. Um, and so just the opportunity to really dig into the to people and places that aren't necessarily what you would normally see if you're just going to do the tourist thing, which I am not against at all. I think being a tourist is fabulous, but there is something to be said for being able to take that extra step further and being able to be in intimate places with people.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that you do all of your interviews in person. I could just imagine the personal touch that adds. I mean, I did one of your interviews, and we were together. We were face to face, and I really understand your point as a difference between on video, which it's or audio, which I think is it still can be filling. It can be very valuable, but there
Yes.
is a different touch being in person, being together. So I think it's awesome that you do that. That you make it a point to do that. Um, I want to. I want to ask you, and then Minister Marks, you can follow up with a question or a comment. But I want to ask you: is there a story that stands out to you? The interviews that you've already done so far, is there one in particular that just stands out? And if so, what about it makes it stand out?
Yeah. I mean, I am very recently thinking about the episode that I put out this week with a woman named Hannah from Columbus, Ohio. She has she had a very tumultuous childhood experience that then led her to the work that she's doing today, which is anti trafficking work. And she actually runs a drop in center in Columbus, Ohio for vulnerable women, um, that are currently working in the sex trade. it was just such a beautiful conversation of hope and healing, and seeing somebody's story play out, and seeing them draw the connections from their childhood to where they currently are. So I really, really enjoyed doing that interview. I enjoyed posting that episode. I was very proud of that and proud of her, because over and over again, I am just floored by people's willingness to be open and vulnerable.
Mhm.
Their capacity for other people, and the general humility that people approach their stories with. It is just the most fascinating and incredible experience for me personally, but I truly feel that that comes through in the episodes as well, because people have just been so open and genuine. So her episode for me is really special, but I think in general, I have had so many people be just so open and so honest. And Tia, your episode was the first episode that I released, apart from my own stories, which I were the first two episodes. So Tia's episode is episode 3. And the reaction, I mean, this was the first episode that I really put out. The reaction to your story, Tia, was overwhelming. People just loved you and loved your story, and felt such a kinship with you. And I will tell you that your story, your episode, still is the most downloaded story that I have so far. People are still downloading your story, Tia. So
Oh
that was
wow, I think that is awesome. But and I would say I do a lot of interviews. I do a lot of interviews and speaking engagements, in person or video or what have you. And I have to say, um, one of the things that made a difference for me with your interview was that in person part. Was the
mm,
us? I mean, we already had a relationship, you and I, so I was very very comfortable. But I can rattle off my story, because I'm just so used to doing it. Like that's what I do. Like that's what we do. We tell our stories, in advocacy. But sitting with you, that personal touch, it really did make a difference for me.
mm,
And I have to tell you, I once we did the interview, I kind of put it out of my mind because I have to move on, to the next project. But when you released it, it was like it just really hit me. Like that,
mm.
the interview that I did with you was it was just so touching. Like you did not change my words. You didn't try to manipulate the interview. You didn't try to make it sensational in any kind of way. It was just we were just talking. We just had a conversation that hopefully will help someone else. And so I really, really appreciated that. The interview that I did with you, there is not another interview that I have done thus far that's touched me personally that way because I listened to it to listen to my own story. It was and the way that you conducted that interview, it was just beautiful for me.
Wow.
What you did for me is what I want to do for uh, those that I interview, and so I appreciate that so much. I really
Thank
do.
you. Thank you.
Minister Marks, you have a question or a comment?
Wow. Hey, Jen, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm okay. So my question is your story. How has it helped you by telling other people your story and your healing process?
Yeah.
Going through what you went through. Now other women can physically see that you made it through it. How has it helped you in terms of your healing in this process of the human experience? How does it help you?
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, telling my story and kind of figuring out how to tell my story was certainly one of the catalysts that brought this project to life. Um, because I realized through my healing journey and through, training to become a domestic violence advocate and going through lots of therapy, I realized how seismic of a shift my story caused in my life. So it was the kind of thing that I can look back on and say, this one experience changed who I am as a person. And not everybody has that, but we all have pieces of that, right? We all have things in our lives that we can look back on and acknowledge that they are a huge part of who we are. And not that we find our sole identity in that, but that I can look back and say, well, I have become who I am because of walking through this specific. And so I got to a point where I realized if I feel this way, then other people have to feel this way as well. Other people have to have things in their lives that have changed them and molded them. And so I found it, once I kind of came to that conclusion, I found it to be very empowering, right? Like,
Yeah.
that wasn't my full identity, but there was something to just the feeling of, this experience has molded me, this experience has shaped me, it has changed how I think about almost everything. Um, and so that is something that I pitch to other people when I'm looking to interview somebody, is think about the experiences in your life that have molded and shaped you. Think about the things that you've walked through that have made you stronger. They've made you who you are. And I would say that you here in this moment today, just showing up, that is strength, right? So I like to think of being strong as, you have to have you have to have reached a certain level, right? You have to have gotten over certain things. But I think it's important to acknowledge that just surviving something is strong. Just making it through something is strong. Being able to change is strong. It's strength. Being able to learn and grow from your experiences, even if it's not until years later. So that is how walking through my experience really formed the kind of beginnings of what is now the human experience.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, if I haven't told you before, I love the name of your podcast, The Human Experience. I think that's just awesome because there's just so much in that title, and it just says so much, the human experience. I think it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
But with that, I want to ask you, you're welcome. Have you ever, in any of your interviews thus far, have you had any surprises? Has there been anything come about that you didn't expect, like during a conversation or, in the meeting? Any surprises thrown at you?
I would say yes, but not in a bad way. Like, I would say that there's a lot of times when, I will start to have this conversation with somebody about their story, and I think that we're walking down this one path, and then things kind of take a turn and it ends up being something completely different than what I had originally thought. So I'll give you an example. Episode 4 is Joe's story. He's a friend of mine. I know him well. And he had gotten some surprising information after doing one of those ancestry DNA tests. And so that's what we had talked about doing as an interview. Like, we're going to, talk about what that process was like, what it was like to, go through that and figure out that you had family that you didn't know about. And it started off like that. That is how the conversation began. But by the time we were finished, it became this beautiful conversation about family and identity and belonging, and breaking generational trauma. So in that way, yes, I am constantly surprised just by where people are willing to go in being open and vulnerable when given the opportunity and when given a space that they feel safe to speak in.
That is awesome. Because well, I know with me, I always know what our topics are going to be, and I think that's just my personality. Like I plan everything out, so I
Yeah.
know who I'm talking to, what we're talking about, and I go from there. I think there are times where the conversation, I think the conversation is always good. It's always purposeful, um, but like I can't say that I'm like ever caught off guard because I prepare and I
Yeah.
just
Oh yeah, absolutely.
but I think that's a beautiful thing. I really do, to start a conversation, and it goes where it goes. But I think just to have that conversation, to be able to share your experience, and it comes out, and you're able to um, help someone with your words, whatever it is. I just think that that's just beautiful. Male, female, no matter what your race, creed, or color is, to be able to share your story and just know that somebody around the world can relate to you. Somebody around the world is listening to you, and they're gaining strength from you. They're gaining knowledge from you. It's just a beautiful thing. And I think, again, just the title, the human experience. I like you can't get any more clearer than that. And it's just and it's so simple but so powerful at the same time.
Yeah.
Like the human experience, like we all have something in common.
Truly.
And it just takes one person to start talking about it. It just takes one person to open up, or it takes the person to ask the right question.
Yes.
Like if you ask the right question, then it's just like this beautiful thing just opens up.
Yeah.
So with that, I want to ask you, as you allow others to bring out and to share their stories, how does that, or does it, bring you satisfaction for giving others that chance to express their voice, that chance to open up?
Oh my goodness. It is literally the highest honor, the biggest privilege that I have ever had. I have never felt more humbled in my life than walking through this with people. And again, just the overwhelming generosity of people to tell their story and to be vulnerable. It's scary. It is scary
Yeah.
to be vulnerable. There is so much hatred out there. There is so much judgment and shame and guilt, and there are a lot of stories that people already feel, they already internalize
Yes.
those things. And so to say it out loud, you're then putting yourself at risk to have those very fears confirmed. And it is a big leap of faith
Yes.
to trust somebody else with your story. And I am just floored and amazed at what people are willing to be open about and share in the name of connection and growth
Yeah.
and humanity. So it is, I cannot overstate how incredible of an honor it is to be in this position. And I will say, to your point about letting the interview go where it goes, people
Yeah.
are very gracious with me because, you sign up to do an interview with somebody and you kind of want to know where it's going to go. Like you said, you want to know
Yes.
what we're going to cover. You want to know that I'm going to be trustworthy. And people have really just been so kind with their trust. And it continues to amaze me. I don't provide people a list of questions before the interviews,
Yeah.
which does freak some people out. They're like, what are we doing? Like, you haven't sent me any questions. I don't know what we're talking about. And I basically put it on them and say, this is on you. Like, you're leading this interview. I will be obviously here. I'm not going to leave you to hang to dry, but I want this to be your narrative. And so I don't ask people a set list of questions
Mhm.
beforehand, or give them a set list of questions beforehand, because I want it to be very organic, and I want it to go wherever it needs to go. And to that point, Joe's interview that I was talking about earlier, we would not have gotten where we were in that interview. We would not have gotten to that end result if I had provided him a list of questions.
Right.
We would have just been going down that list. And so I say that I want, when people listen to this podcast, I want them to feel like they walked into a living room and they joined a conversation that has been happening, right?
Yeah.
It's not an interview, it's a conversation. And the fact that people have continued to trust me to do that, especially when prior to January, I had not released any episodes. They were just trusting me blindly. I had nothing to show for this. It still blows my mind. And I am just so, so grateful.
Well, I think you've already proven your character and integrity, for those to sit down and interview with you. I mean, like, I know you. I get requests to do interviews from organizations or people who I don't know, and I go because of the advocacy. I go because I want to help someone. I go because I believe in what I'm doing. But when I accepted the request to do your interview, like, it's like, I know Jen. Like, I know Jen. Like, I know her. I know her story. I know how she is. So I mean, that in and of itself is a beautiful thing. And even as much of a blessing as it is for your interviews to go forth for others to hear, it truly, truly was a blessing for me to hear my own interview. It touched me. I did not listen. I did not hear the interview that I did with you until I think it was maybe a year, almost a
Yeah.
year
Yeah.
after it was done.
Mhm.
I'd forgotten about it. I'd moved on, but to hear it, it really touched me. It really did. So as much as it is helpful to the listeners, it's helpful to the one who's being interviewed, to be respected, to be heard, to have your words delivered the way you delivered them. It's a beautiful thing. So I can say that it was helpful to me. I mean, and I still listen to it to myself. I do sometimes
Good.
when I'm walking or exercising or just doing whatever. I listen to it. I get something from my own
Mm,
interview, and
I
I
love
think that's the best. I think when you're a speaker, when you speak, if you're a minister, when you speak, you should be able to hear something that you say yourself that is touching and that's helpful to you. Minister Marks, um, do you have a question or a comment for Jen? So, Minister, if you have a question, just let me know. But I want to share some the resources again for Pakistan. I first want to welcome you again to A Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. We have a replay on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern, and then again on Thursdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern. And we want you to remember, Love Bay, that we are rising out of the ashes together. So again, in Pakistan, we have War Against Rape. Their website is war.org.pk. We have Badari. Their website is Badari, BEDARI.org.pk. We have United Nations Development Program. Their website is www.undp.org. And we have the Acid Survivors Foundation. Their website is acidsurvivors.org. And listeners, with that, I also just want to remind you, wherever you are, you can reach out to your local organizations. You can reach out to the national organization where you live, and they can direct you to places closer to your community. So wherever you are, if we don't get to your your local numbers. If we don't get to the local websites, you can always reach out where you are and find the information that you need to serve yourself, no matter where you live, no matter what country you're in, no matter what state or province, wherever you are, there is help. And sometimes it takes us to dig a little deep for ourselves, to go that extra mile. So I just want to encourage you, wherever you are, if there is help that you need, to seek it out. And you seek it out until you find it, until you get what you need, because you are absolutely worth it. So Jen, I would ask you next, what are your future goals for the human experience? What else do you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many dreams for this.
But isn't that beautiful? Isn't that a beautiful thing? I mean, really, honestly, considering our past, considering our experience,
Yeah.
that's awesome to say, to be able to say that
Yes,
and mean it.
truly, yes, yeah. Um, I mean, I want to continue to just amplify the voices of others, and one thing that I'm trying to be really intentional about is, I've had people tell me, oh, if you could just get like a celebrity on, or somebody that like has a lot of followers, and then like you can get a lot of followers, and there is a certain type of value in that, and I understand that, and I know that anybody that says that to me is just trying to help. But I'm trying to be really intentional about the fact that we live in a society that already amplifies the voices of those who have a platform built in, celebrities, people that are wealthy, and people that already have a stage. It's like a echo chamber sometimes, that is just the same voices going around and around. And I really want people to feel empowered by their voice and the voice of others like them. And I think that there is a certain type of value in, being able to see yourself in somebody that already has a platform, being able to identify with somebody that maybe is a celebrity. I understand that there is a certain value in that, and absolutely no hate
Mhm.
or anything bad to say about that. But I would really, really love to create space um, for just the every person to come and share their story. And for the sake of learning and growing, but also for the sake of bearing witness. I think that as somebody that believes in God myself, this has become such a mission for me, because one of the biggest purposes behind this for me is the idea of bearing witness to people's stories and meeting people exactly where they're at in their lives. And so I want people to know ultimately that they are loved, um, and they don't need to change or do anything to receive that love, right? And so it's very important to me that people know that you don't have to be any sort of thing, you don't have to accomplish, have hit certain accomplishments or have gotten, you don't have to have arrived in your life to receive love, and to be worthy of love. And so I think there is a huge importance to bearing witness to where people are just right now. And so that is what I want this to be. But as far as my visions for it, I want it to be global. I want to talk to people all over the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you are global. I mean, you've been in Africa and Romania, and you are global. Minister Marks, do you have
I've
a
done
question
3
or a comment?
continents so far,
Yes.
so I'm hoping to get all 7.
Awesome. Minister Marks?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So I really appreciate um, the fact that um, your vision is bigger than where you are. Um, what what I uh, what I have an issue with the church is that we don't have these conversations. You know, we stand up on the pulpit on Sunday and say, "Give it to
Mm.
Jesus," and then that's it. But there is a reality that domestic abuse is real, suicide is real, and other human experience issues are real. And it's amazing to me,
Yeah.
um, that people beyond the pulpit has a greater uh, um, gets
Hmm.
more attention than those who preach the gospel. That we supposed to just give it to Jesus and that's it. What I see from you is you're getting the results that you're
Mm.
getting. It's I can't say it's better than what the church does, because your work, your mission is bigger, um, beyond what we see in traditional church. So what I do appreciate the fact, that you are taking this mission, and that the church, we don't want to touch this stuff. And I'm glad a person like you and Minister May are able to connect even with the young girls, 16 and younger, because the truth is they're going through it also, and they need to see women like you, um, from different cultures, uh, can say, look, we made it through it, we got through it, you can do it too. So that
So
wasn't a question, it's more of a statement.
Yeah.
well, I
Thank
think it was
you.
a beautiful statement. I
Yeah.
mean, I
No,
wholeheartedly agree. Yeah. Jen, you were going to say?
thank you. I mean, truly, I will say that I part of the reason that I am where I am today is because unfortunately I didn't have the support in church. And I've talked to so many women that also did not find that support within the church building structure. And so there is a part of me that didn't even know how much I needed that until I found it lacking. Right. And so I will say for that in that sense, I'm grateful to have had my lived experience because I probably wouldn't have that thought or that mission without it. So I am grateful um, that I am where I am and I did make it through and I did have people that supported me even though they weren't within the confines of my church. I'm so glad to have met people like Tia and you and all of the co-hosts that are a lot of you are in the church, you are ministers in the church and you are actively working towards reconciliation and towards restoration and going against what a lot of the mainstream church culture is doing. And I really appreciate it. And for me personally, it's very healing to see.
So this reminds me of a conversation that I recently had with someone about my work in advocacy. When I go into churches to speak about it, I'm not just speaking to Christians. And I mean, and I will go into other religious organizations and speak about it because domestic violence, sexual assault touches everyone. This is not an issue about religion. And so my conversation revolved around the issue of when I do what I do, this is not about conversion. Um, when I do what I do, this is about a conversation. Um, if you want, I am a Christian wholeheartedly. I am. But when I'm dealing with domestic violence, I have to show you the Christ in me because I have to help you meet the need that you have. That need might be me educating you and giving you information and showing you this is how you handle this situation. As far as a religious organization, this is how you are supposed to respond to your ministers, to your members. This is the help that you need to offer to victims and survivors. These are the resources available to you. Even if it's just sharing my own story, this is what happened to me. This is how I got through it. These are the steps that I took, and because I made it, you can make it. I'm not just saying something just to say it. I have experienced this. So I can encourage you. I can support you. There is a time and a place for everything. If you want to talk to me about Christ, if the moment is there and you want to talk about Christianity, great. Okay, but I'm not going to take a person who you're hurting and you're broken and throw scriptures at you and tell you it's okay, just pray. No, at that point you have to be practical. No, are you safe right now to get you to a safe place? Do you have what you need? Do you have clothes? Do you have food? Do you have shelter? Nobody is in the mind to pray in a moment where they are physically, literally bleeding and broken in front of you. And I think it's very it's insensitive to just take someone and their problem in front of you and you're just flip about it and you just say pray. It's more to it than that. And so again, I agree. The work that we do, it goes beyond the church walls, but even within the church, we have to recognize there is more to be done. There is actual physical work that has to be done. Faith without works is dead. Don't give me one without the other. And don't make me feel bad if I'm not believing what you believe and I still need help. I help you regardless. So again, it's what we do affects everyone. So everyone needs this help. Everyone needs these resources. And that is the goal. That is what should be done. And we need to understand one person is not better than another. One financial status is not better than another. Your education, your religion, one is not better than the other. We are all people. We are all humans. We all have these experiences and we need equality. We need help. You don't look at someone and say, your skin entitles you to more help in this area than the person next to you. It doesn't work like that. There's too much of that in the world already. And then when you have these issues, when people are physically, literally broken, and they're ashamed already to come forward, and you start throwing other things at them, that's not the way to get help and deliverance to a person. It's just not. And I break everything down on a very, very practical level. Right now in front of me, what do you need? Let's meet that need. And for me, in my eyes, the way that I see it, much of what I do, I have to show you Christ instead of taking my Bible and throwing it at you. I will demonstrate Christ to you through my actions. And so I think that's where we all need to be. And I mean, unfortunately, I also believe what we do is not going to stop. I guess when we get to that point of, when we can lay it down and pass the torch and somebody else picks up, unfortunately, there is going to be a torch that is passed because this issue is not going away. It's not. But what you do, I mean, I really want to congratulate you because you've taken your experience and you've used it to keep going forward, not just to help others, not just to advocate, but you're doing your own thing. You're doing what Jen wants to do. And I congratulate you so much just on your personal accomplishments and moving forward in your life and just doing what you want to do. That's a great thing. You are a beautiful example. And especially to the younger women. I think it was the group of girls in Romania, was it? I think of them, who you come into contact with and what you do. So just hats off to you. Congratulations. And I thank you so much again for being with us here.
Thank you.
I don't know. I think thinking of the younger women, I think I would ask you, what specific would you say to that younger group?
Yeah. I did. I got an opportunity to speak to teenagers in Romania about specifically domestic violence, and while I was over there visiting, and I had never done that before. Actually, I had never spoken to that demographic directly, but I also knew how important it was. And so when they asked me if I would be willing to do it, I wholeheartedly said yes. There is so much that I want for young women and for young girls. There's so much I want them to know about themselves and about the world. And unfortunately, how much of it isn't changing as fast as we would like it to. Um, I have nieces. They're still pretty little now, but I am
Mhm.
so passionate about them being proud of who they are, being proud to be women, to be girls, being proud of amazed by women, constantly amazed by their capacity, their relationships, their hearts, their ability to give and um, to come together to take care. There's a lot of things that are said about women that are just mean, mean spirited and meant to divide. And I think what I want women and young girls to know above all is that they are powerful. Um, they have the ability, every single one of them, to change the world. And society and the people around you will tell you that, um, you know, that it's a competition or that you have to be a certain way or you have to look a certain way. And it's just not true. And, I grew up, went to school, got married, like did all of the things correctly, right? And Tia, I know you can relate to this as well. I did all of the right things. That I did all the things that I was supposed to do
Mhm.
to ensure that I had a happy life. It didn't work out that way. And it wasn't until after coming through that I realized how much I had within me um, to change things, to change the world, to change the world around me, to be a part of a community, and to celebrate other women. And so I really, really would just want young women to know how big their capacity is.
Awesome. Minister Marks, do you have another question or comment?
So I do have another question. Um, so how do you personally handle this question when you're in a conversation with another, let's say, young lady, even or a young man, and they ask you, why did God allow me to go through this? Um, because I find that even in my own personal help with others, that's one question that I get a lot. Why did God allow this to happen to me? How do you answer that question to others?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think first and foremost, I say I don't know. I think that it's too easy for us to kind of make up a reasoning about God that kind of ends up putting God into a box. What I will say, I will say I don't know why God allowed that to happen. I don't know why we went through that. But what I can guarantee you is that all of the things that you felt, the grief, the shame, the anger, um, God was feeling those right alongside you. God was
Mhm.
weeping with you. God is near to the brokenhearted. And so I think that is the more important piece in that equation. That for as angry as you are about the lack of justice, God is as angry as you are about the lack of justice that you receive.
Can I add to that, Minister Marks?
Yes, ma'am.
Um, so, because I get that question, and when I get that question, I answer it. God is all knowing. He's omnipotent. He's omnipresent. He's everywhere at all times. He knows all things. Um, he understands our hearts, our minds, our souls. There is such a thing as our will. So we get to choose what it is that we're going to do and not going to do. And we can be inside of God's perfect will, or we can be inside of his permissive will. So when we do what we want to do, we're inside of his permissive will. If we're in his perfect will, then we're, living by, um, we're living by his words. But with that, with us having a free will, we can do what it is that we decide to do. We can make our own choices. So we're Christians, so heaven and hell is real for us. We can do what we need to do to go on that pathway to heaven, or we can do what we need to do, which is believing on Jesus Christ, or we cannot and take that pathway that leads to hell, which is what we believe as Christians. If I decide to go rob a bank, I decided to do that. God didn't tell me to do that. If I decided to hurt someone, God didn't tell me to do that. So there are some things that happen because we have free will. And unfortunately, every person does not choose to do the right thing. Every person does not choose to respect their neighbor, their family member, their loved ones. Sometimes there will be, well, not sometimes, but there are plenty of times. It's within this past hour, there have been thousands upon thousands of people that have been abused because somebody chose to do that. God didn't make that happen. Um, and so I give that answer. Unfortunately, we choose to do some things that are wrong. And unfortunately, some of the things that we do that are wrong can end up hurting another person physically, can end up killing a person, can end up, causing some serious damage and trauma to somebody else's life because that was a choice that a person made. I think it's very easy to say God did this or God did that, or God let this happen and he didn't stop this from happening. But I think that takes the onus and a responsibility off of the person. There is an abuser in a situation when someone who is abused. That abuser has a responsibility and should be accountable for his or her actions. Um, and I know that's not something that people want to hear, because I think in times where you're hurt, because I felt it in times when you are hurt, you want this situation corrected, or you want vengeance exacted, or whatever, and you want some answers and some explanations. And so I think the easiest thing may be in some situations is to point a finger at God, when sometimes we can only just look at ourselves as individuals, because we have a responsibility walking upon this earth to respect each other, to care for each other, to acknowledge each other. And unfortunately, we all don't do that. Um, so I guess as easy as it might be to either go into that spiritual part or that mystical part, or wherever you want to call it, I think sometimes it's just really simple and very easy at times. The answer is in front of us. You did what you wanted to do. You hurt somebody, and now you need to take responsibility for it and be held accountable for it. But, and again, that's not, I mean, when you're hurt, when you're the victim, you don't want to hear that. You don't. Minister Mark, you going to say something?
No. I was agreeing with you
Okay.
what you were saying.
Yeah. So I think at times I think there really are just simple answers. And I think we can hurt so much that the simplicity of an answer is just, that's not what I want to hear right now. I really don't. And actually, having been hurt, having experienced hurt and pain myself, when I experienced my own hurt and pain, that is when I actually understood and realized why family members and friends of victims are not allowed to sit on juries. They're not allowed to pass judgments. Now, you can give a statement, you can speak, but you are not allowed to have a hand in whatever sentence is given, because, I mean, you would throw the book at whomever all the time. Like, I don't even need to hear all the evidence. If you hurt me, you hurt my loved one, you need to be under a jail. So having my own hurt and pain, I understand better the justice system, because some of our justice would it would go above and beyond. It would, like, I have to match and surpass the hurt and pain that I received. And again, when you're hurting, you don't want to hear that. You don't. And so that's why we can't move out of our emotions. We can't operate out of our emotions. We need some other individuals who can step into our situations and help us. That's why our ministers need to be educated. No matter whatever religion you're in, the faith leaders need to be educated and need to understand how you respond to a victim or survivor. Need to understand what the resources are, where they're available. The general public needs to understand how you respond in a situation. And there also needs to be education and understanding on how to deal with a person who is classified as an abuser. Because sometimes just taking a person and throwing them into a jail cell is not the answer. That person may need to be educated and need to understand what you just did is wrong and this is why. Because, for instance, some of our boys are being grown up in atmospheres where they think it's okay to put their hands on a girl because that's all that they have ever seen. But if someone teaches them and shows them this is how you communicate with a girl, you are not supposed to take her and just push her down. All of that running around in the schoolyard and pulling her hair and pushing her, that's not okay. So if we stop laughing about that, and if we stop coaxing our little boys and saying, it's okay to push her down because you like her, give them that education, then there are some situations that we'll avoid when that little 7 and 8-year-old is then 17 and 18 going down the line. So wherever we are, whatever we do, we all need education and support on all sides. And I think it's very, very easy, again, to blame God for however you're feeling. If you feel good, God did it. If you feel bad, God did it. But we have to take responsibility for ourselves. Um, and again, I think that's a simple answer. And sometimes you don't want to hear the simple answer. Sometimes we want to be deep and complex and like that makes it better, but it's not. Sometimes it's real simple. We're people and we need to be responsible for ourselves, for our actions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we are just under the hour. Jen, I want to thank you so much again for being here with us. I want to thank you, Minister Marks, for being with us. I want to ask you both to leave our listeners with your final thoughts on the evening. And again, I thank you both for being here, just for your thoughts and for sharing your hearts. But whatever you would like to leave our listeners with, Minister Marks, I'll ask you to go first.
So, what I would say is that your experience matters.
Yes.
It doesn't matter the age, the color of your skin, your social status. Your human experience matters. Because, like Jennifer said, that your experience is a witness to help somebody else get through, and as proof and evidence that you can make it through. So, again, your human experience matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen?
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to come on again and talk about this. I am just really grateful for you just always sharing your platform and being willing to elevate others and other people's stories. Yeah, and I will just echo what Minister Mark said as well, that your story matters, what you've gone through matters. There is no shame, there is no guilt that you should be feeling about your own story, your own experiences. Um, those kind of feelings and emotions aren't of God. They, conviction is one thing, but shame and guilt are just really oppressive. And I think only by opening and sharing and being in community with each other is when we really start to heal from those things. So, I hope that people continue to tell their stories, whether it's on my platform, yours, or their own.
Yes.
Continue to tell their stories and to find community and healing through that.
Awesome. And Jen, tell our listeners again how they can access your platform.
Yeah, I am on all major podcast streaming services. The Human Experience is the name of the show. You can also follow on Instagram at the HX Pod or visit the website www.thehxpod.com.
Awesome. Thank you both again. And listeners, I want to mention it was my friend Aziz Nathu. He's an interfaith chaplain in the Muslim faith community. And he was the first person who made that comment to me, that phrase, conversation and not conversion. So I want to give him credit for that because it stayed with me. And it's something that I carry with me, and it's something that I share. I want to thank you again, Jennifer and Minister Marks, for being with me. Love they will both be back, which I appreciate very, very much. If you want to catch up on previous episodes from our program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence DV. Thank you for joining Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Love Bay family, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. Thank you. Thank you both so much. I appreciate it so much.